I'm Timothy Snyder, and I'm speaking about my book on tyranny, 20 Lessons from the 20th Century. I'm doing this for a couple of reasons. The first is it's been 5 years almost, believe it or not, since I wrote the book in late 2016. A great deal has happened. But the second reason, the better reason, is that there's now a new edition of the book, a graphic edition, illustrated by the fantastic Nora Krug, in which I've used an updated text, and she's illustrated this text to give the book, I think, a much broader resonance. So as I've done this project, I've returned to the lessons, and what I'm doing is making 20 little videos, one about each of them. It's August 2021. I'm in Poland, and the lesson we're talking about today is number 13, which is practice corporeal politics. I'm going to read it and then make a couple of remarks. So, practice corporeal politics. Power wants your body softening in your chair and your emotions dissipating on the screen. Get outside. Put your body in unfamiliar places with unfamiliar people. Make new friends and march with them. Like a lot of lessons in this book, at first glance, the logic might not seem political. And this is very important because where we end up politically often has to do with actions or thoughts or moods of ours which are not political or which are pre-political. It's a mistake to think that politics always comes first and life comes later. It's more often the case that the way we live our lives enables us or disables us from carrying out certain forms of politics. Just moving our body or just being in public is a good example of this. One way this is true is just psychologically. Whether or not we get out of the house, whether or not we're with other people, whether or not we physically move around, has a tremendous influence on how we feel about the world. After more than a year of COVID, I don't really need to explain this. COVID has made this point for us. Being alone, being inside for too long with too much screen time makes us depressed. It makes us vulnerable to bad politics. I'd go so far as to suggest that the terrible events in the US in late 2020, the coup attempt that was carried out by Mr. Trump and the support he had for that, had something to do with people being too much on their own, spending too much time in front of the screen, being too much separated from other people, being too much exposed to the falseness that you can find on the internet. The second reason why corporeal politics is important, being outside is important, being with other people is important, is just sociological. Being outside, being in physical contact with other people, mixes things up. If all we have is virtual contact, the virtual contact is predictable. The whole way that social media works is to classify you, to sort you out by some lowest common denominator, and then to get you in a virtual space with other people, or bots for that matter, who share the same characteristics. If you're outside, if you're at a protest, if you're at a march, or if you're just joining an organization, you're going to meet people that the internet would not have you meet. You're going to encounter people who are new. You're going to be able to mix things up. You're going to become a better and more interesting person yourself. The third reason why what I'm calling here corporeal politics is so important is moral. There's a reason why we say taking a stand. Taking a stand is a physical action. It's not just something that you do by saying that you're doing it. Taking a stand involves getting your body someplace where you'll be recognized, where you'll be with other people, where you're making a point not just with your mind or with your mouth or with your fingertips, but you're making a point by choosing to put your body in a certain place at a certain time with other people. That's what taking a stand means. That's why it's called taking a stand. And this leads to the last point that I wanted to make about corporeal politics. Visibility, unforgettability. Things that happen in the virtual world come and go. They influence us, they matter, they mess up our minds. But what happens in the real world has a kind of staying power in human memory. The Black Lives Matter protests, for example, in the US in 2020, most of them were not recorded by the media. The tremendous scale of those protests was not, I think, correctly recorded, but the people who took part in them remember them. So I was quite sick in late 2019, early 2020. When I got out of the hospital, the first physical thing I did was get dressed up and go to a Black Lives Matter protest. Am I ever going to forget that I did that? Of course, I'm never going to forget that I did that, because I was with other people. I was doing something that I cared about. Unpredictable things happened around me. I met people I wouldn't have met otherwise. And that has a reality. The reality isn't just political, of course, and that's the whole point. The point is that the things that lead us to do the right things in politics often have to do with what we do with our bodies, what we do with ourselves. And that's the point of lesson 13, which is practice corporeal politics. Thanks.